That was a reasonable morning, listening to people offering views about this space, inside and outside of this jurisdiction. It's funny, as I said, a lot of relationships with consulting firms, and across Australia, I deal with all the major consulting firms, and I've watched with interest the bets that they've taken locally and the bets that they've taken internationally. And it was an interesting one with Ernst & Young. I know when they took their bet was, it looked like a very long time horizon bet. It was a much more decentralised world bet. Didn't look like these private blockchains and didn't look like the money that was going to be close by. And I remember thinking, wow, they're really committed to it. Interestingly, I thought, I don't know whether it's a great business decision, because sometimes there's not as much patience within consulting firms as you would like, because someone needs to wear the whip every single time. But interesting watching that position look like a better and better bet as time goes on. Very lucky to have Paul make his way from New York via San Francisco. The expectation that I had was he's going to be very entertaining. When I spoke to him, he was very entertaining, and he's going to talk about what I've characterised as the New York state of mind via San Francisco. Interested to hear how the views differ and what the view is from afar. So welcoming Paul to the stage.
I'm going to pick up one of these because I'm not good at... Is this on? Can you hear me? No. Yes, there we go. Okay, so it is so good to be here to talk to people about blockchain, in person. It's not like this for me at home, right? My husband, he rolled over in bed a few weeks ago and he's like, honey, I'm having trouble sleeping. Can you explain how blockchains work again? It's painful. It's nice to hear people laugh, though. On a Zoom call, you have no idea if what you said was funny, right? I've forgotten what it's like to hear people laugh. And then I watched all that Hannah Gadsby stuff, and now I just don't know what's funny anymore. But I still love Hannah Gadsby. So I'm going to talk about 3 things today in my 15 minutes. What I do want to do first is just take 2 seconds to talk to you about EY. We got a great introduction from Steve, and I really appreciate that because we are different. Right, we have taken a very distinctive point of view, which is EY is kind of 2 things, right? We are a very traditional consulting, professional services, accounting, financial statement, audit place, but there's 2 things that we have really staked out a differentiated point of view on, not just our t-shirts. Number 1, public blockchains. We are a public blockchain-focused company. Honestly, I simply do not believe in the value proposition of private blockchains. If you could get somebody to run a blockchain for you, you could get them to run a web server for you, right? Secondly, we are overwhelmingly an Ethereum-centric firm, right? And I will explain a little bit about that point of view. In fact, our point of view really closely coincides with the messaging around this event, which is we are entering a mainstream moment. And the first thing I want to talk about is this transformation of the mainstream moment, because I don't think most people are changing the way they operate. Now, they say that New Yorkers are always in a hurry, and I am always in a hurry. I'm not actually a New Yorker. I'm originally English, as I'm sure you can all tell by my accent, and I grew up in Colorado, and I did spend some time in New York, but I am mostly a relaxed California guy, in theory. But in reality, I run around EY like my hair is on fire because I have an incredible sense of urgency about this market. And the reason I have an incredible sense of urgency around this market is because it is being transformed. And the 3 things I want to hit upon are, first, what does it mean when you go into this period of mainstream adoption, right? Mainstream adoption, the mainstream moment. What it means is that the debate over which platform you're going to use is over. Ethereum won. We are headed towards an Ethereum future, and I would challenge, you hear people say things all the time like, hey, we're going to go live in a multi-chain world. No, we are not. And the reason I believe that we're not is very simple. It would require an enormous departure from the history of technology to believe that we're going to enter into a mainstream world. We don't have 20 different networking standards. We have TCP/IP. And the internet connects other TCP/IP networks. Ethereum, the layer 1 network, is going to connect other layer 2 networks, which are going to be Ethereum networks. Right? So technology loves standardization. Technology loves scale. Networks love integration. And so I would really challenge people who think we're going to have a multi-chain world to tell me why we're going to have such a radical departure from the history of technology, right? So that's really point number one, which is in spite of all the noise in the marketplace, Ethereum represents 95%, and when I say Ethereum, I mean Ethereum plus sidechains like Polygon, our good friends over there. We're building, by the way, a layer 2 network with Polygon. It's going to be the first enterprise-focused, privacy-centric layer 2 network. It's called Polygon Nightfall, and it's built on the technology that EY developed around blockchain privacy. But it is going to be an Ethereum world, right? And it's going to be one where integration is the most important thing inside of that ecosystem. Now, what does it mean when these things start to ramp up, right? What it means is that even though the winning network is imperfect, it has scale. 95% of all the NFTs, 75% of all the DeFi dollars, right? Depending on how you measure it, somewhere between 3 and 10 times more software developers than any other ecosystem, right? Those are the winning metrics. And typically, about a decade into a technology ecosystem, you have that winner. Now, there are absolutely better blockchains out there, right? And the most important thing to remember is that the best technology never wins. It has never won. Right? Nothing in your pocket, on your wrist, on your desktop is the best available technology, I promise you, right? But it's the one that was available and it was the one that worked. So that's kind of really point number one, right? Separate the signal from the noise. We are heading into a world that's based on Ethereum. Don't spend time asking yourself what blockchain to build on. Spend time thinking about what is the use case that you are going to build towards. Which brings me to my second point, which is if you are racing towards a particular set of use cases, how do you think about the level of scale or the size of the opportunity? And this is the other thing that I see over and over again, and it's a big danger that companies in banking and other technology industries kind of mistake all the time. When you go into a mainstream adoption phase, what that means is 15 to 25 years of 25 to 35% a year growth. I know that sounds crazy, but it's not. That's what cloud looks like. That's what enterprise networking looks like. That's what personal computing look like. That's what enterprise software look like, right? ERP. Every single one of these businesses was 15 to 25 years of 25 to 30% a year growth. And what does that mean at the end of that process? That means that a business like the world of blockchain, which has a market cap of 2 to 3 trillion today, will be 40 times larger. 40 times larger. What that means is that you can expect in 2037 for the blockchain financial ecosystem to have a market cap of roughly $110 trillion if blockchain performs about the same as cloud or enterprise networking, or ERP software. And when you think about it like that, if you go and tell somebody, hey, this is going to be a $110 trillion business, they'll be like, that's crazy, right? When you tell them that exchanges, the on and off ramps for fiat, are going to generate about $1 trillion in fees a year, they'll be like, that's not going to happen. That seems crazy. It isn't crazy. It is just technology, a mass adoption cycle repeating itself. And this brings me to the last point, which is lots of people look at it and say, that sounds nice, Paul. Thanks for sharing. Please let yourself out, right? We'll talk to the more sensible consultants in a little bit. The problem with that viewpoint is that those people who take that view are also thinking to themselves, when this market really gets going, it's early days, we'll make our decision. No, it's too late. Now is a time when you need to fight for leadership. And you only have to look at industry after industry after industry to know that the people who took an early lead in a particular use case kept that lead pretty much forever. GM was the largest car maker in the world from 1936 pretty much onwards, right, for like 50 or 60 years. Cisco has been the #1 enterprise networking company since the mid-1990s. SAP invented and still owns the ERP software business, right? The stakes that you are fighting for today are the stakes of 15, 25, 35, 45 years worth of profits. And the odds that you can join this market later and fight your way to the top are extremely low. They're not zero, right? Because it does happen from time to time, right? Social networks fall apart, enterprise software companies go off the rails. But the truth is, in all probability, unless you really screw things up, if you take a leadership position now, you will have it forever. And so a lot of my colleagues at EY, they're like, Paul, what is your problem? Why are you such a colossal pain? And my answer is, I'm born that way, right? But also, and it's not true, by the way. Like, people claim I am pro-conflict. I'm not pro-conflict. I'm just not afraid to have a fact-based discussion about what things are going on. And sometimes people are like, we can't bring you to the client because you'll express your opinions. But that's the reality, is you need to be fighting now for the market share that you're going to win or lose over the next 3 or 4 years. What you see over and over again is that the early phases of the use case dominate the later output. So those are pretty much kind of my major points. I would say the final thing I would like to close up on is, what does it mean to think about organizing your own organization to be successful? And here I would argue, I would make a couple of really important points. Number one, consistency matters. It matters a tremendous amount. At EY, we have been in the public blockchain and Ethereum business for 7 years, right? And our compound annual growth rate during that time is 100% a year. And I would say for the first 5 of those years, people would just laugh at me at firm events. I once sat down at a partner dinner and they're like, Paul, when are you going to stop wasting our money with this blockchain thing? And I said, around 2025, right? That's when I hope we'll be break even, right? And that is not an answer that goes down well in 2017. Right? But the reality is that you have to be consistent. Secondly, there is no substitute for actually doing things, right? You can write as many white papers as you want, but until you've actually tried to build a zero-knowledge proof-based privacy-enabled transaction on the Ethereum blockchain, you have no idea how hard it is. When we built our prototype of our privacy tool back in ancient times, which was 2018, we needed 3 full blocks of Ethereum network time, entire block, to complete a single transaction. It was so computationally intensive. I think we used something like $60,000 worth of gas in today's terms to get it done, right? And that was in 2018, and we've been hammering away at this ever since, right? And we are now working with Polygon. We're going to have Polygon Nightfall launch. It's available on the testnet, and you'll be able to do privacy-enabled, zero-knowledge, optimistic roll-up transactions for 25, 30 cents each, right? So we got ourselves down from like $60,000 a transaction to 30 cents over 5 years, right? That is a long, long time to fund an R&D effort and a bunch of mathematicians, right? And I talk a lot inside of EY, and I say this over and over again, and I say this to every firm that wants to play in this game. I shamelessly steal a line that they use at Amazon all the time, which is, there's no compression algorithm for experience. There are no shortcuts. There's no easy alternatives. There's nothing that can beat the power of actually doing it. And so the last thing I encourage every firm to do is to do something. Because every time you do it, you will learn something. The first time you go to your compliance people and say, hey, I would like to be paid in crypto, you will be laughed out of the room. I know I was. And then you will escalate, and you'll go to the chairman of the firm, and the chairman will say, yes, I've heard from them already. They said that you're a real pain. And then I will say, can you please go and call them and ask them to work with me anyway? And 6 months later, you will be getting paid in crypto. And the first time is really painful, and the second time is moderately painful. And by the time you've done it the third time, you have routine and business process. And that is the only way it gets done, right? So you've got to do it. It almost doesn't matter what you do, you will discover all the pain points along the way. So that's my last piece of advice. Just have a sense of urgency as you go into this. The stakes are enormous, and it's absolutely not early days. We are in the late stages when it comes to getting market leadership. And I think we are right on time. Oh, fantastic.
Paul, you're talking about, you're going to rooms, you talk about things like zero proofs and roll-ups and the things you're doing with Nightfall. In the US, do you get a sense it's any different to what it is in any other jurisdiction? Because I imagine that language alone, without any detail, will leave people flummoxed. So is the US that far ahead, or is it just you're in these rooms now where there's a level of sophistication, but it's still, the broad-based appeal and understanding is still absent?
Our business is heavily US-centric. I would say we probably get more than 70% of our business in the US. And there are two factors there. One is we got a lot of clients there, and they're quite sophisticated in their buying capability. And then some of it's also just a little bit of the EY logistics of how do you run like a large global firm and where do you get people to invest. The US leadership was more ready to invest on the risk-taking side. Our European clients are definitely catching up. Our clients in Asia Pacific are probably the furthest behind, right? The market here is a bit more fragmented, right? If you go and look at, and I had this conversation with our senior leadership, I said, if you go look at where Ethereum mining is done, which I think of as a proxy for where the activity is, it's about 35-40% in the Americas, 35% in Europe, and about 25-30% in different parts of Asia and the rest of the world. So the US should be the biggest market, but it shouldn't be that big, right? Which tells me that at least some of this is just our relative internal firm differences.
Terrific. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate your time.